Alrighty, welcome to the 99th edition of Before the Battle here live on YouTube. My name is Nick Baldwin of BloodyElbow.com, and joining me as always is a writer for MMAfighting.com. It's Jed Meshew, of course, Wes Riddle of MMAsucker.com. You know, this guy in 2018 particularly, it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to do two shows in a row. He was here last week to preview UFC Fight Night 125 with us, so why would we ever think he would show up tonight? But first, Jed, how are you?
I did not expect he would, and that's okay. You know, if we can only get Wes Riddle once every other time, that's still once every other time more than we deserve, Nick. So that's
That's a
okay.
good point. That's a very fair point.
I don't make points. I speak truth, Nick. You know this. I'm a truth teller.
The naked truth. When is that coming back? Is it?
I have no idea. I'm really busy these days, and I have to do all the production on it. So it's on hiatus for the moment. We'll see if I can get some free time.
Well, all right. Well, at least you have other podcasts to do, such as this one, such as now our new post-fight wrap-ups. I'm keeping you busy, Jed. We don't need TNG to keep you busy. You have me.
You are keeping me busy. That's part of the reason why I'm spending all my time talking with you. But fortunately, you at least take care of the production aspects of this, so I don't have to.
I honestly don't. It's more Google than anything, but I'll take the credit anyways.
Take the goddamn compliment, Nick. Take the goddamn compliment.
Last week, we had UFC Fight Night 125 goes down, or I should say, went down from Belém, Brazil. On Saturday night, we had Lyoto Machida take home a close split decision win over Eric Anders, previously undefeated middleweight rising contender, up-and-comer. And it wasn't a very good fight. The whole card was interesting. We had the cancellation of John Dodson, Pedro Munoz. We, of course, hadn't known about that last week. This time on Before the Battle, we previewed that fight. I believe we all did. One of us pick Munoz? I don't remember, but it doesn't really matter. We had a lot of weird things happen last Saturday, so let's dive right into that real quick. Jed, what do you got for us? Our results for our picks, our underdog pick of the week, DraftKings, and post-fight bonus predictions.
So we have some news here, Nikolai. For the first time in 2018, I have no belts.
Wow.
Some of you might remember I started the year off with all three of the belts. I managed to hold on to two of them each time. I had yet to give up the Picks crown so far this year. I held that belt and then alternated between having the bonus belt and the DraftKings belt, but I have been unseated from all of my belts. I did not have a good event. I went 5-6, which is not a good event, but frankly, nobody really had a good event picks wise. Wes Riddle also went 5-6. Nick, you ended up taking home the prize with a record of 6-5. So congratulations, you are now our picks champion. You missed on Soto, Vera, Means, Golm, and Anders. And then Wes and I missed on most of those as well, but we also missed on the Morales pick. We picked the underdog Morales, came up a little bit short in his UFC debut. Maybe not debut. I can't recall off the top of my head. Going forward beyond that, our bonus champion this week. Congratulations, Nikolai. You are now the champ, the man of two belts. With a sterling performance, you correctly predicted the fight of the night, which was Santos Smith. And performance bonuses for UFC Belém went to Valentina Shevchenko and Yuri Alcantara. You predicted Shevchenko would get a performance bonus. So with those two predictions, you are correct, and you take home our bonus crown. Your other prediction was Eric Anders. Obviously, didn't get a win, much less a bonus. Wes Riddle didn't get anything correct. He had Andrade Vera as his fight of the night. But he had to change. He did originally have Dodson Munoz as fight of the night, to be fair. So when that fight got canceled, he got a little bit short shrift there. His performances were Anders and Santos. Neither of those guys ended up taking home a bonus, obviously. Morales was his underdog pick of the week, as was yours, by the way. And then I was so close to keeping my performance bonus belt. I also predicted Valentina Shevchenko. I missed fight of the night. I had Means Marias and had Anders as a performance bonus. But my underdog pick of the week, I originally had Yuri Alcantara. I had him on this show. I said Yuri Alcantara is going to be my guy. He did win, and I would be tied with you, which means I would keep my belt. But last minute, I messaged you and Wes and said, I'm feeling Bobby Green. I changed him to my underdog pick of the week, and that was a bad change. Bobby Green did not get the win. Michel Prazeres and his fat-ass, well-overweight self.
You're saying Bobby Green, huh? I think you're a little mistaken.
Desmond Green. Sorry, not Bobby Green. I was thinking 2 events back with Bobby Green. But yeah, Desmond Green, Michelle Prazeres' fat overweight ass ended up beating him. I feel like an asshole. And so now I have no belts because you have both of the belts I previously held. And our DraftKings winner from last week is, congratulations, Wes Riddle, 377.5 points for DraftKings. A bad week for all of us, as you would expect, going 6-5 as our best score.
High 300s is not usually a winning team,
Yeah,
winning amount for us.
not a great week, really. I mean, Wes had Pollyanna Viana as his only triple digit scorer. I also had Viana get a triple digit score. You, in fact, had two triple digit scores with Thiago Santos and Pollyanna Viana, but Joe Soto for you put up zero point 0.5 points, and Morales put up 4.5 points. So just a bad round for us
Not
on
a
DraftKings.
fantastic effort from Morales and Soda.
Yeah, not a good round for us on DraftKings, really. But Wes Riddle squeaks it out with 377.5 points. He's not here, but he is your DraftKings champion. That is all old business. We are ready for new business, Nikolai.
New business. Well, we have UFC 211 goes down from the Perth Arena in Perth, Australia this Saturday night, or I guess it would be Sunday morning, Sunday brunch time if you're live on scene. We have the interim middleweight championship in the UFC on the line when Yoel Romero takes on Luke Rockhold in the pay-per-view main event. We also have Mark Hunt, the Super Samoan, back in Australia taking on rising heavyweight Curtis Blades. Honestly, not the best or pay-per-view card we've seen. I think I don't think that's a very unpopular opinion. I've seen nobody think this is a great card or even a good card, but we got to do what we got to do.
I think it is a good card. I think it's a terrible pay-per-view is the thing. The fact that they are trying to sell this as a pay-per-view makes very minimal sense to me. Even at the time they did it, it didn't really make sense because as much as you and I may like Bobby Knuckles, Sir Robert of House Whitaker, he's not a pay-per-view draw at this point. There's nothing to suggest he would do well on pay-per-view. And a fight between him and Luke Rockhold is, for my money, the most interesting fight in the middleweight matchup. I thought that was a sensational fight, but it was a regional show, and we should have treated it as such. They were going to Perth, they were going to his home area, they were going to fight in Australia, and that should have been treated like a UFC on Fox card. This would be a perfect main event for a UFC on Fox event, whereas you have a belt on the line, and you can maybe get Robert Whitaker out there in front of more eyeballs, turn him into a star, or help boost Luke Rockhold, who already has some star power, some acclaim to himself, some notoriety. Get him in front of eyeballs. Whoever wins that, Robert Whitaker is a young guy. He can boost his star appeal. Luke Rockhold, a very, very handsome man, gets on, the Fox network. He can maybe do some things with that as far as a cross-body appeal here. They didn't do that. They opted for a pay-per-view for no reason. And even when Whitaker pulled out, and now you've got Romero jumping in, who this is for my money, the second best fight at middleweight is Rockhold versus Romero. But this should really be a Fox card or a fight night card because it makes sense that way. It's a regional show. It's a card filled with a bunch of regional fighters. I think it's a really well matched good card. I think asking people to pay $60 for it is insanity though.
Yeah, I think a fight night would be a lot better, not just because of there's no price tag on it, but let's be honest. I mean, even myself, I've been sort of. I need to remind myself that this isn't a title fight. This is a number one contender fight.
It
I
is a
don't,
title fight.
I know it is, but interim titles don't mean anything. They mean even less than real titles, and so for my money, all interim title fights, and this isn't something that's you should disagree with or anybody should. It's a number one contender fight, and we don't typically see those headline pay-per-views. Although in the odd time, I don't mind when non-title fights headline pay-per-views, but in this case, the fact that it's not free or for the undisputed championship, that takes it down even further because even if this was, say, Whitaker Rockhold, that still doesn't make it a good pay-per-view card. We just have sort of that one up in a way in the main event, but still, it's still a fairly weak pay-per-view portion, rest of the card. But what you're gonna do? We're still here to break it down, and that is what we.
I want to rebut two things, I guess. Not exactly a rebuttal, but one, I can't believe I'm saying this, but earlier this week I wrote a piece covering a thing that Luke Rockhold said at the pre-fight press conference, where he thinks if he beats Yoel Romero more convincing fashion than Robert Whittaker does, he should be considered the real champion. I actually agree with that statement. I know most people think Luke Rockhold is being an egomaniac, and that's fair. He seems to have a large one of those. But the argument he made is actually fairly compelling because Robert Whittaker did not win the actual middleweight title. He is not the lineal middleweight champion because George St. Pierre is that. Michael Bisping was the champion. Whittaker did not knock him out, even though we all believe that that's what have happened. He did not. He was an interim title champion that he won by beating Yoel Romero. If Rockhold does the same thing, that puts them on even par realistically. And for my money, Rockhold's resume is just better than Robert Whittaker. That doesn't mean that I think Rockhold would beat Robert Whittaker in a fight. I probably think at this point I'm taking Robert Whittaker there. But I think if he does come out and gets a decisive win over Yoel Romero, I think he is. I think he should have the right to be considered until such time as he fights Robert Whittaker to be considered the best middleweight on the planet, because I think his resume will have demanded that. So that's the one thing I super want to agree with. And then I forget what else I was going to say there. I knew that there were two things I wanted to talk about, but I don't really care anymore. We're here. We're in it. I think it's going to be a good fight. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is this to me is just part of the problem with the UFC in 2017 and 2018. And really for more than that. It is they don't want to build stars. They want to plug people into star roles and hope it all works out in the wash. And that hasn't been working out for them. You've seen their pay-per-view numbers drop significantly, but for a few elite people, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, those people. And this is it. Like, this isn't a pay-per-view card, and it shouldn't be treated as such. They shouldn't go into this thinking we have to fill a pay-per-view and hope that works out. They should be thinking we need to build pay-per-views around the people that they can be built around. And right now, none of these people can be. So, but if you put this on Fox, maybe the winner of that could be a pay-per-view draw, because it gets people access to these people. You're getting more eyeballs on the product, and that's always a good thing. So that's the end of my spiel. Let's get into it so we don't waste too much more time on a card we both agree is not the best.
We missed that last part. We both agree is bad, I assume, is where you're taking
not the best.
Okay.
I don't think it's a bad card. I just don't think it's the best. I think it's bad to ask people to pay $60 for it.
We'll start things off on the UFC Fight Pass early prelims going down at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Saturday. If you are on scene in Perth, you have to wake up a little early for this one. The Fight Pass early prelims kick off 7:30 a.m. the following day on the Sunday. We kick things off in the welterweight division with Luke Jamo taking on newcomer Dachi Abe, who is coming over from Pancrase. I have heard nothing but good things about the Japanese fighter here making his debut. Have you heard similar things, and do you think he gets the job done against the New Zealander?
Wait a second. Are you saying that Dachi Abe is making his UFC debut?
I believe so.
No, he is not. He fought Hyungu Lim in September.
Why does he have no photo on the UFC? Okay, that's weird. I totally forget that fight.
Yeah, he beat the hell out of Hyungu Lim. Anyway, he's not making his UFC debut, so not to throw you under the bus, but I just fucking did. He's taking on Luke Jamo. I don't want to talk a ton about this fight, but basic feeling here is that Jamo is a tough guy, a durable dude, been around the block, I suppose. But he's just not as good as Dachi Abe probably anywhere. I mean, maybe he can do a little bit here, just hang around and force, because Abe's still young in his career, only 6 fights so far, I think. So maybe he can, kind of let his experience play around if he can hang around to the later rounds. But I just don't see what he's got here. I think Abe's got much more power, much more, just a better striking game. I think Jumo's a little bit basic on his feet. And if Abe even wants, I think that he could win the wrestling if he so chose to do that. And I just don't think Jumo's that great, really, anyway it cuts it. So give me Dachi Abe with, I'll say, stoppage in the second round TKO.
Alrighty. I'm going to go with Dachebi here as well. Not doing his UFC sophomore appearance in the Octagon. Jamo, he's coming off a loss to Shinsho Anzai. So interesting matchmaking. I think it might have been us talking last week or sometime where you sort of pointed out that the UFC doesn't totally follow the winner versus winner, loser versus loser matchmaking anyways. And so I guess the matchmaking is okay. It seems like it's a fun fight on paper. It could be entertaining, but I think Abe will have his way here with Jamo here for the most part. Jamo, he's tough, he's gritty, he can do everything okay. I feel like Abe will have a big advantage though on the feet. I think he hits a bit harder. He's a bit more technical. I don't think we see a stoppage here. Just based off the fact that Jamo, their last both fights were decisions, and I know that's not the best way to predict how a fight's going to play out, but I'm going to go with it anyways. Abe by decision.
Also, let me jump in here and say I do have Westfield's picks right here. He disagrees. We've got dissension already in our ranks. He is taking Luke Juma by unanimous decision.
Alrighty, well, making things interesting early on, and Wes isn't even here, so I guess we kind of have to like Wes for that. It sucks that he's not here, and shame on him, but at least he's making it interesting. We move on to the UFC bantamweight division with Teruto Ishihara and Jose Quinones. Who do you like here?
Give me Jose Quinones here. Look, everyone sort of likes Teruto Ishihara, but I'm not sure he's good at fighting. There was a time when I thought he was. I think I picked him to beat both Gray Maynard and Artem Lobov. He was the favorite in both of those fights, by a pretty decent margin, actually. But he does not seem to really be growing much as a fighter. He can counter-strike and has pretty good power in his punches. But he also kind of gets stuck not doing a lot sometimes. He can get outworked just kind of picking his moments or whatever. And he, despite working at Team Alpha Male, sort of just is not very good at wrestling. You would think that as long as he's been working with those guys, that skills would have showcased itself in some, manifested in some way, but they just haven't. And for whatever flaws Quinones has, dude is a relentless wrestler. When he gets on top, like when he gets contact, he is going to doggedly pursue takedowns, finishes them at a fairly high rate. And I just think that that's kind of the story of this fight. I think, maybe Ishihara can land a big shot to change the course of this thing, but much more likely that Quinones just kind of takes him down 3 times and sits on him until the round's over, and he eventually gets his hand raised. And Wes Riddle, our compatriot, agrees at least with the outcome. He has Quinones by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I got to go with the Mexican Jose Quinones here to defeat Teruto Ishihara. I've been fairly high on Ishihara, but I think over the past couple of fights, I've realized, okay, he actually does have a ceiling. He's not going to be the next huge star in the UFC or next big contender at 135 or 145 because he's fought in both weight classes. He's coming off a win over Rolando Dai, but still close. I mean, Dai gave him a fight, and he was able to do some good work in that fight, although coming up short. I know the scorecards were a bit weird in that one. I remember there being a bit of controversy. I think maybe a point was taken away from Dai or something like that. We see so many fights, so I don't recall exactly what happened. But we saw big holes in Teruto's game when he fought Gray Maynard. There's nothing. It wasn't a huge setback because Gray Maynard is Gray Maynard, but that's also 2017 Gray Maynard, so it does mean a little bit. Stylistically, that just clearly in hindsight was not a good matchup for Ishihara, but Gray was still able to expose Ishihara, his wrestling defense, his capability on the ground, his ability on the ground. And so I think Jose Quinones is a bit more technical here. And although he might not have the finishing power that Ishihara possesses, I think he will be able to take Ishihara down throughout 3 rounds and grind out a decision. He might actually be he's probably a bit of a better striker as well. So I think he has his way with the Japanese fighter here over the course of 3 rounds. And so give me Quinones by unanimous decision. We move to the feature fight pass early prelim. It is Ross the Real Deal Pearson taking on Mizuto Hirota. What nothing against just one sort of thing I realized. We have 3 new so we have we have 2 New Zealanders versus 2 Japanese fighters, and we have England versus Japanese. what's up with all these Japanese fighters? Is this UFC Japan or
No, but I don't know if you've ever seen a globe, and
have I? I don't know.
Japan's proximity to New Zealand is not especially far away. It's called regional booking.
This
Put
is
two
a
and two
well.
together.
I thought this was a regional card. This is
It is. It is. Basically, every New Zealand or Australian fighter is on this card, but there aren't that many of them on UFC contracts. So they also filled it out with a bunch of Japanese fighters.
I guess you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far. Let's look this up right now. How long from Japan to
It's
New?
gonna be like 2 hour flight. I'm gonna look like an absolute dumbass for I don't know
Maybe
finding that.
not, because to be fair, from Sydney to Tokyo is 10 hours, but that's not exactly what we're looking at here, right? Let's take a
It's
look at the
Perth.
old. I mean, yeah, it's Perth. No, it's still fairly far away, which I suspected that might in fact be. But yeah, you're still probably looking at like an 8 hour flight. But you're in the same time zone, so you
I mean,
know.
I guess if they're bringing over Canadians, then why not?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, my general assumption is that you're still within a general region. I mean, I know that it's not that close because, especially us Americans, and to an extent, you guys kind of underestimate the distances on that side of the map. I know I personally have done that before, but I, I genuinely believe Japan is still in the same time zone as Perth. So
I have no idea. Probably, maybe.
it's they're pretty close on longitudinal lines. So
I know nothing about anything stepping outside Winnipeg's boundaries. That's where I sort of
that's
stop.
that's where you finish. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair
Well,
enough.
Ross Pearson taking on Mizuto Hirota. Who do you like here?
I don't have a goddamn clue. um, my head sort of thinks that I'm supposed to take Ross Pearson here because somehow Mizuto Hirota is even older than Ross Pearson, because Ross Pearson is deceptively not that old, even though it feels like he's been around for just millennia at this point, and definitely looks shop worn from when he used to be a kind of top 10, top 15 guy. Whereas Mizuto Hirota is got to be old now, right? I don't even know how old he is. Got to be like 37, I think. So 36, 37. But and I think Pearson has avenues to win here. I think he's a better boxer, both at range and in close. I think his leg kicks are good. And Hirota kind of, I don't know, seems like he lets fights come to him more than kind of initiating his own offense. But at the same time, when was the last time Ross Pearson won a fight? Do you know the last time Ross Pearson won a fight?
Was it Paul Felder?
Well, that's yes, I suppose so. But well, no, he won a split decision over Chad Lepre. Do you
Oh yeah.
recall that fight?
I
Do you know
do.
how
I remember it happening. I remember though I was at a family dinner, I think, during that card. So I didn't watch it, but I remember it happening.
you had a family dinner? What? What is this nonsense?
I actually do other things than MMA. Very few, but
uh,
occasionally I'll put aside MMA.
I don't believe you. But yeah, he beat Chad Lepre, split decision win. But I think that one was a close one. I don't recall super well. The Paul Felder win, I actually do think he beat Paul Felder, but like, if that's your last convincing win, was 2015. He is on a 4-fight losing streak and basically hanging around the UFC because he's, he's Ross Pearson. He's been around for a while. He won a tough, so he kind of gets the benefit of the doubt here. But so it's really tough for me to say. I guess I'm gonna take Hirota just because he also has the kind of wrestling angle. And while Paul Felder has been a good defender of takedowns, I think maybe Hirota can keep it close on the feet. No, I'm not. I can't. I wanted to talk myself into it, but I think Ross Pearson probably gets his first win of since in 4 fights or whatever, and just kind of box his way to a decision. I don't feel good or confident about this pick, so don't bet on my say so on this one, certainly. But Wes Riddle is going to disagree, so we are going to have dissension in the ranks, Nikolai. He is taking Mizuto Hirota by unanimous decision. So split the difference. Tell us who's right, who's wrong.
Well, Wes is not here, and he's also wrong. Give me the real deal here to get back on track. This is kind of a pretty good fight for Pearson. I think. I don't know where Mazota Hirota can threaten him all that much. I mean, sure he might be able to wrestle Pearson. I just don't see that happening. I am not sure Hirota is fresh enough or just good enough to do so. I mean, Pearson is done too, and so if Hirota sits on top of Pearson for 3 rounds and wins a bad decision or a lackluster decision, I won't be shocked out of my mind. But I do think Pearson will get the job done here. My preview, my breakdown here is pretty much just what yours is. I think Pearson is going to box Hirota up for 3 rounds and get a pretty decisive victory, the one that he badly needs. So give me the Englishman here, Ross, the real deal Pearson by unanimous decision. We move on to the FS1 prelim card, which goes down at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, with one of the best fights on the entire card, and it is kicking off the televised prelims. We have Juicy Formiga taking on Ben Wen. We have two flyweight contenders. Title shot could be on the line, depending if Demetrius Johnson does end up fighting bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw this summer or not. Otherwise, particularly if Ben Wen gets the job done here, which he's not favored to do, but the odds are really, really close. I believe last time I checked, he's a very small underdog, plus 100, I think. He could, he does have an argument for a title shot with the win over the Brazilian, who sort of seems to be the best gatekeeper. And I hate saying that because the guy has deserved a title shot in the past, but we saw Ray Borg defeat him last year and get a title shot off of it. How do you see this one playing out? It's a really tough one to call.
I agree, a very tough one to call. I guess first I'll say Wes has it as Formiga is going to get the tap out probably by rear naked choke in the second round. So I'll go from there. Formiga is a guy I basically can't pick right against. However, he fights, whatever happens, my prediction always seems to end up wrong because he's such a strange fighter. He is one of the very best in MMA at finding the back through scrambles, takedowns, position. However he can, he kind of just finds a way to sneak into back control. And once he's there, he's super difficult to shake off. Not many people can or have ever done it. And then he either kind of controls the round and wins the round because he has back control for 3 minutes, or he manages to find a way to sink in the choke. And Ben Nguyen is kind of the other end of the spectrum here. He's going to try and stand up and fight. He's a good defensive wrestler, not a great one, but a good one. But he does kind of sometimes end up in scrambles, which does not behoove him in this matchup. But if he can keep it on the feet, Juicy Formiga has come a long way as a kickboxer. He has dramatically improved in that regard, so that is good on him. But at the same time, he's still not a great kickboxer. He doesn't threaten a ton on the feet, and he doesn't throw a lot either. So it's hard for me to say here. My brain sort of thinks that if Ben Nguyen is, my brain thinks, I guess, I don't know which way this is. I think my brain thinks that Ben Nguyen should win this fight because it just makes sense to me. He's the younger guy. He can use his wrestling in reverse, as Mike Goldberg used to say all the time. Keep it standing, not disengage, not allow Formiga to get those tie-ups, those scrambles, that back control, and just outpoint him on the feet. But my heart kind of thinks like, shit, I mean, Louis Smolka got him. That's feels like maybe Formiga can just find a way to control here. Tough for me to call. I am going to side with Ben Nguyen here just because I've said it a bunch of times, and maybe this is just dead wrong at this point, but side with the rocket ship going up, not the one that's starting its descent. I think Formiga is getting older, and he's just going to be one of those guys who has been a top 5 flyweight for basically ever, and somehow never ended up getting a title shot. We never got to see Formiga Demetrius Johnson, despite the fact that Formiga was kind of, when they instituted the flyweight policy, he wasn't the betting favorite by any stretch to win that 4-man tournament, but he was kind of the reigning champion at that point. He was the Tachi, like the Tachi Palace champion coming in at that, or former Tachi Palace champion, I believe, and just like a guy widely respected as one of the best flyweights in the world, and he's maintained that position, but just been unable to get into the actual title hunt. So I think that this still happens again, and once again, Ben Nguyen gets him, and I guess probably does earn a title shot here. So that's exciting.
Depending on Dillashaw again, and it really comes down to that. If they book that for July, Wen probably takes one more. But nonetheless, I mean, still a tough challenge. What's that?
I don't know if he does. Like, would you? I think he has.
Well, no, but fighters love to fight, and more often than not, when we see people deserving of title shots, but if someone's holding up the division, look at Conor McGregor at lightweight.
You might be right. He might fight Sergio Pettis, and then for the
off a loss. I don't know.
I mean,
honestly, they might throw him in with Henry Cejudo, and that could just derail.
Cejudo will just beat him.
I know it doesn't make sense.
Cejudo for another shot.
UFC doesn't do things right so much of the time. So I mean, I wouldn't do the Cejudo fight, but I wouldn't be shocked if they book it.
I wouldn't. If I'm Ben Wen, I wouldn't accept the fucking Cejudo fight because I can't beat him. So I would sit on my 3 wins and campaign aggressively for a title shot and hope it works out. But that's neither here nor there. Me and Wes are once again split. He has Formiga by submission. I have Ben Wen punch kicking his way to a decision win. Arbitrate for us.
Other than the main event, I mean, I said it off the top. This might be my favorite fight on the card. I mean, I have a thing for the flyweights. Not gonna lie. I mean, they're so talented. They're the quickest in the UFC. They're the most athletic in the UFC. They're just really damn good, and maybe even more so. I like them maybe even more so just because they certainly don't get the credit they deserve as a division as a whole. That obviously starts with Demetrius Johnson and ends with a lot of other talented fighters. This is a really interesting matchup. Formiga, obviously one of the best backtakers in the UFC, especially, of course, in the flyweight division alone. Guy's really talented on the ground. He's a great jiu-jitsu artist, and it's tough to beat him just in general. I mean, you have to be very good to beat him. Ray Borg, Henry Cejudo have both done it, but in recent years, but that's pretty much it. Formiga has 5 losses, but those other 3 a bit earlier on. Ben Wen seems to be getting better. He's still pretty young at 29. And so he's going to be looking to stand here, and I think he'll definitely have success on the feet. This really just comes down to where is this fight being contested. Because as you mentioned, Jed, he got just pounded on by Louis Smolka in July of 2016. Granted, that was when Smolka was at the top of his career. That was when he was talking about maybe fighting for an interim title after Demetrius Johnson pulled out of the UFC 201 card, which you covered, due to an injury when he was supposed to fight Wilson Hayes. Louis Smolka wanted to fight Hayes for the interim title. Of course, it never happened, and since then, he's been on a terrible losing streak. But I think in hindsight, that loss seems a bit or our perception of Wen's loss to Smolka is a bit changed because of Smolka's recent setbacks. But I think Wen is better than he was a year and a half ago, and I think he's improved all around. And I would guess he's really worked on that wrestling defense and grappling defense more than anything. He's going to have the striking advantage. He'll definitely have, Formiga's going to have the submission and grappling advantage. It's a tough one to call. I'm going to go with Ben Wen. I think he gets the job done here. He doesn't have to fly or have a far flight. He lives in Australia. He lives in Brisbane. I don't know exactly how far how far Brisbane is from Perth, but can't be too far. And Formiga's coming over from,
Can't be too far. Australia is like enormous. You know that, right?
Not that. Come on. We don't need to get back into world geography, but.
Well, if he was to drive it, it would take him 46 hours.
I'm talking about an airplane.
I know. I'm just saying it is 4,000 kilometers apart.
Okay, so find the airplane time. We need to. If we're gonna do this, we got to take it all the way. You can't just.
5.5 hours.
You cut out 3.5 hours. Did you say?
5.5 hours.
All right. Well, that's not. I mean, that's better than 15.
It's the same as me flying to Europe.
Okay, I guess if you're on the West Coast or East Coast, I was thinking me in Winnipeg. But okay, whatever. All I'm saying is he has a shorter travel time than Formiga.
He certainly does.
And I suppose that's worth mentioning. 1 out of every 100 fights are affected by that intangible.
You know what this show has taught us? That you and I both know not a goddamn thing about Western Hemisphere geography or Eastern Hemisphere geography.
Yeah, I need to make my way over to Australia or Southeast Asia, somewhere around there.
Yeah, apparently we don't know a goddamn thing about geography over there, so good to know that's what it's the hard-hitting analysis you're getting, folks.
I passed grade 10 geography 2 years ago, but that was Canadian, so.
That's true. All right, continue. Sorry. Ben
I'm
Wynn
going
is
Ben
your
Wynn.
pick?
Ben
Okay.
Wynn's the pick. Really close fight. Won't be shocked if it went the other way. Pretty much up until yesterday, I was actually going for Mika. Just sort of had I switched. There's not much more to that. So give me Ben Wynn. I think he'll win a competitive decision. In Australia, I don't expect a split. In Brazil, it certainly could be close enough to go for Mika's way. But Ben Wynn decision is the pick. We move on to the featherweight division. Alexander Volkanovski taking on Jeremy Kennedy in a fight that was supposed to happen last year. So these guys don't love each other, maybe don't hate each other, but definitely a little history between the great and JBC. Who do you like here?
I think this is a sneaky great fight. Talking about two legitimate prospects in this division here. And I am struggling with a pick here. I know Volkanovski is actually a confident favorite betting wise, but I definitely see a way where Jeremy Kennedy can win here. If it stays on the feet, Volkanovski is going to win. He is just a better striker, both at range and kind of in that clinch area, middle distance as well. Much more active, much better defense, the whole shebang. But Jeremy Kennedy has been a takedown machine in the UFC. He has taken down everybody he has fought so far and taken them down multiple times. He got five on Alessandro Ricci, 8 on Hani Jason, and 8 on Kyle Bochniak. But those guys aren't as good a fighter as Alex Volkanovski. So it's a tough one for me here because if Kennedy can get takedowns, I think he wins this fight straight up. I mean, if he can keep it somewhat competitive on the feet and then just score takedowns, I think he's going to win. And Volkanovski has been taken down with some regularity. He's a good defender of takedowns, but not a great one. So it's going to be like we're going to see if he has improved a lot or if Jeremy Kennedy is just that good at getting the fight where he wants to go. I think maybe I'm just getting swayed here by the odds and thinking that Vegas knows something that or feels more confident in something than I do. I'm going to take Volkanovski here by unanimous decision. I don't think he gets Jeremy Kennedy out of there. I think he just kind of wins on points. But I think it's going to be really close. It might even be a split decision here because, like I said, I think Kennedy is at least going to get one round just by securing takedowns. But it's how much Volkanovski makes him work for it. I think that he's going to be able to kind of outlast him. And he's going to have that home field advantage, going to have that home cooking all that extra juice behind him for that fight. So give me Volkanovski in a really, really close fight. And Westwood somewhat agrees. He has Volkanovski by unanimous decision, so I don't know how close he thinks it's going to be. But it's 2 of us for Volkanovski. What about you, Nick?
Got to complete the hat trick. Funny I say that considering we're all picking against a Canadian, and that's a ice hockey term, and ice hockey's Canada, and you get it, and I don't need to explain
I'm not sure
any
it's
further.
an ice hockey term. Is it not a soccer term? Do you know from
Well,
which the term
I know it
originated?
from hockey.
Of course you do.
But I'm Canadian, so of course, yeah, exactly. I like Alexander Volkanovski here, not by a lot. I'm sort of on page with you. I think this will be a very competitive fight. And kind of like the last fight, in a way, it comes down to where this is contested. Alexander Volkanovski, though, is more well-rounded, I believe. He's the better striker by quite a bit. And Kennedy, I think, is better on the ground. His wrestling is arguably better than Volkanovski's, although I think that's very up for debate. But I think the grappling is a clear advantage for Kennedy. I think he's a bit more dangerous with his submissions. He's lanky, and so he wraps up some submissions quite well. But yeah, I think Volkanovski, with his wrestling ability himself, I think he'll be able to defend more of Kennedy's takedown attempts than not. And so I think this will basically be on the feet more than on the ground. And I like Volkanovski in that area. So Alexander Volkanovski is the pick. I think it will be 2-1 rounds for the Australian. I do think Kennedy will grind out Volkanovski for one round, kind of like what you were saying. But I think Volkanovski is going to be able to outpoint Kennedy in 2 of 3 rounds, giving him the unanimous decision win. And just one more thing, I think Volkanovski is a bit more athletic than Kennedy as well, so I think that could help as well.
Well, just one more thing, because we are an informational podcast and we want you to be learning all the things. And so far, we've taught many people many things on this podcast. Hat trick, the term, originally a cricket term, or that's where its origins lie. So both of us were wrong. It's a British term, not Canadian.
Again, showing our lack of Western knowledge.
I don't think anybody fucking knew hat trick was originally a cricket term, but other than Google, the Google machine knew. So now we can continue.
Although, never trust everything on the internet, so you never know. You never know. Could be hacked in by the cricket organization. Probably is hockey, but we'll leave that for another time. We move on to the middleweight division with a highly anticipated debut of Israel Adesanya. I butchered that, but you know who I'm talking about if you're a hardcore fan of either MMA or kickboxing. The guy hails from Nigeria. He's 11-0, and he has a fantastic kickboxing record. He's flashy, he's fun, and he's just damn good. A lot of people who know this guy are thinking this guy's the future. He's taken on Rob Wilkinson, who unsurprisingly is a pretty big betting underdog here. Do you give much chance to the Aussie, or does the undefeated Israel get the job done?
No, I don't give him a goddamn chance because I'm not a fucking psychopath. So Rob Wilkinson got bolted by CR Bahalarzada, so not really sure what we even need to discuss here. I mean, this is just formulaic. Israel Adesanya, if you haven't seen him, if you don't know anything about him, he's a tits, man. Like he is awesome and wildly exciting, super entertaining, glory kickboxer, former glory kickboxer, ton of elite kickboxing experience, super awesome knockouts. Just go search up his name on Twitter. You'll see a ton of gifs. People have been posting them lately because everybody's excited for his debut. And the UFC gave him a softball here. They presented him a dude he should, by all accounts, beat. Style on impressively, and then we could start fantasy matchmaking him against some other exciting people. Maybe we just get a crossover promotion with Bellator and get him versus Michael Venom Page for all the funsies. However you want to do it, really, there's no wrong way to book this guy as long as you don't give him a fucking wrestler. And they didn't. Rob Wilkinson is going to get his brains blown out the back of his skull, and it's going to be super awesome. I have Israel Adesanya with a first round KO. Wesley Riddle, he sort of agrees. He has a second round TKO for Adesanya. I imagine you are going to complete this hat trick as well.
I certainly will. This hat trick will be from hockey, not cricket. Give me Israel Adesanya by knockout in round number 1. And I think as far as this fight goes, I mean, I don't need to talk about Wilkinson. He's gonna get destroyed here, for most likely. Although the only thing I'll say is that I guess Adesanya hasn't been tested all that much on the ground, and Wilkinson has 6 of 11 pro wins by submission, and you never know. We've seen crazier things maybe, but I like Adesanya here by knockout, and I think the more intriguing thing is who has him on his DraftKings and how that sort of comes into play. We move on to the lightweight division, the last FS1 prelim. Damian Brown taking on Dong-Hun Kim. Not that Dong-Hun Kim, but the other. You know him as the Maestro, Little Dong, as you may say. Who do you like your fun fight at 155 pounds? You are muted, Jed.
Yep, I realized as I was talking, you might have seen the oh shit look on my face. I realized I muted it because there was some type of siren going by my house. But anyway, to get back to the point at hand, Damian beat down Brown, Dong-Hyun Kim, Little Dong. This fight should be awesome. Like this fight probably, going to end up as just a brawl. Kim likes to pressure. Damian Brown works counters off the back foot very well. So we're seeing both guys kind of match up in a way that should be freaking gangbusters on the feet. I do not expect I guess Dong-Hyun Kim has also been a somewhat frequent wrestler, but I don't expect we'll see a ton of that here. That may be enough to kind of sway the deal in his favor, though, just the ability to change things up with takedowns. I think if he stays on the feet, it's possible Brown knocks him out, lands the big shot as Kim pressures, but I think more likely it's competitive. It's close on the feet. Both guys have their moments, but Kim probably lands a few more punches, not necessarily, but I just sort of feel that his come forward pressure is going to help him land a few more punches. Damian Brown's not the most defensively responsible, kind of relies more on countering than on super great defense on top of that. But then I think once he's able to pressure forward, I think that's going to create openings for the takedown. Damian Brown is not a great defensive wrestler anyway. He's a fine one, but not a great one. And his back's going to be pressured, going to be moving on the back foot against his feet are going to be against the cage the whole time. And from there, I think Little Dong can work the occasional takedown to mix things up enough and just edge out a decision here. But this fight should be super fun on the feet, and probably spent for the most part on the feet with just a few takedowns from Dong Kim to kind of keep things fresh. So give me Dong Kim by decision. Once again, though, me and Wes Riddle have a lot of different picks on this card. He's taking a lot of underdogs. I am not. I think is the reason it's happening. He is taking Damian Brown to win a unanimous decision here. So again, Nick, you have to arbitrate.
I do.
And keep in mind, let's look at the scorecard here. You sided with me once. You sided with me twice. You sided with me 3 times. So far, you and I have been lockstep on when we split from actually, you and I have just been lockstep on all of our picks. So
that's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yep. So are we going to be lockstep again, or what's the deal here?
We will be. I seem to like picking favorites, and that I'll keep that trend alive here in the last prelim of UFC 221. Give me the other Dong Kim here to defeat Damian Brown. Super fun fight. I know I said Formiga, when is the best fight, other best fight tonight besides the main event? And although that point remains to be true, if Brown Kim goes out there and slug it out for 3 rounds and pick up fight of the night honors, would not be shocked at all. It has that potential. Kim, I always remember him for his loss to Marco Polo Reyes, and Damian Brown is, of course, coming off a fight of the night loss to Frank Camacho. So both guys can be in wars. Both guys typically are, and I'm looking forward to this one. Kim, I think, does get the job done here. I just think, Brown, I think, a bit older, if I'm not mistaken. I think Kim has a little bit more upside. I don't know how much that really is. I don't think it's a ton. I think the Dong Hun Kim we see now is the Dong Hun Kim we'll know forever for the most part. I mean, sure, he'll make gradual improvements, maybe a little bit, but he's not going to be a title contender or in the rankings, anything like that. He's an action fighter, and a lot of fighters are. That's fine. I just think he can crack Brown a bit more than Brown can Kim. I think he's a bit more wild than Brown, but I think that actually comes into play to his advantage here. I think he'll sort of suck Brown into another war, and that's kind of all I have to say about this one. I think it's going to be fun. If you're only tuning into certain fights, make this one of them. I know the card's not fantastic, but we do have, talking about it, we do have some interesting ones.
It's not a bad card.
Even on
it's
the
just a bad pay-per-view. That's it.
Yeah.
It's bad to pay money for, but if this is free for you, super fine card.
Sure, fair enough.
Interesting fights, regional talent to playing in a home crowd, which should make the crowd action feel great. A couple of exciting prospects on here, and a main event that is excellent. Like, this is a well-made card. It's just not a fucking pay-per-view.
So with that, give me Dong Hun Kim by unanimous decision. I don't think we'll see a stoppage in this one. I think they'll sort of slug it out for 3 rounds and go to the judges. So Kim by decision is my pick. And with that, we move on to the 5-fight pay-per-view main card, kicking off at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, with light heavyweights number 13 Tyson Pedro and unranked Saparbek Safarov. Jed, you like the Russian here or Aussie's own?
I'm going to make you do the heavy lifting on this one because, full disclosure, have no idea what's going on in this fight. I know that I have watched both of these men compete, can't recall it at all, watched 0 tape to study for this particular fight. Tyson Pedro is the guy I know better off the top of my head, just in general. I know that he is fighting in front of his home crowd, and I know that he is a pretty sizable favorite. All of that leads me to believe that this is setting him up for a win here over a guy, but I can't. The only thing I remember about Saparbek Safarov is that Jean Valentin low kicked him a bunch and then stopped him, which doesn't speak worlds about your ability, but it's not like Tyson Pedro is a world beater in his own right. But like I said, I didn't do a ton on this fight. The odds are pretty clear here. I'm just going to side with Vegas and assume that they and our colleague Wes Riddle, who has Pedro by first round KO, I assume they know what they're talking about. They did a little more work on this one than I did, but I didn't. So you can break down in very excruciating detail the technical merits of this fight, but not for me. Tyson Pedro KO in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, give me Tyson Pedro here as well. I think this is a setup fight, if anything else. Safarov, from what I remember, and I actually kind of remember his debut loss to John Vellante maybe clearer than I should, because that was way back in December of 2016, and so that's concerning in itself. The guy is coming off a pretty long layoff, so I don't know why that is. I think he had a fight booked. I would have to check topology to clarify or confirm, but I don't remember. But I do remember that was an entertaining debut, but he's just so wild. Eventually, his chin seems great, but eventually it does give in. If the Vellante fight was a knockout, right? Yeah, fight of the night, round 2 KO loss. I think this will look, as far as the result on his side, kind of similar. Tyson Pedro is more well-rounded. He's a more technical fighter. He's better on the feet, better on the ground. I don't know where Safarov wins this fight other than just a wild overhand right swinging from sort of nowhere, swinging from his hips or whatever. I mean, the guy's not super technical. He's just not a very good fighter. He's fun to watch, and I think he could suck or try to get Pedro into a brawl, but I don't think Pedro will fall for that. So give me Tyson Pedro by, well, I think he has a bigger advantage on the ground than the feet. So let's go submission. I think his last fight might have been a knockout before the Latifi loss. And so I think he'll mix it up a little bit and get back to submission ways. And so give me the Australian by second round submission. We move on to the welterweight division with a fun one here. Jake the Celtic Kid Matthews taking on Lee the Leech Jingliang. Awesome fight here. So kind of an awesome fight, more so on one side than the other, and I think everyone knows what I'm saying there. Jed, do you like Jingliang or Matthews?
I do not know what you are saying, Nick. I need you to explain.
Do you really?
I do not know what you're saying.
Lee Jingliang is a fun fighter. Jake Matthews, debatable.
I just needed you to say it. I needed it to be out there for the world to hear. Yeah, I'm going to go with the fun fighter, Li Jingliang. I think this is actually a pretty close fight. I know Jake Matthews may not be the most exciting guy, but he has proven to be a fairly effective dude. He's 5-3 in the UFC. It's hard to have that type of record in the UFC.
Beat your boy Bohan.
I know, right? And I love Bohan. I don't know why. There's no reason to, but I sure fucking do. But yeah, I mean, this dude, he can fight. But Li Jingliang, I actually think is a really good fighter. I don't think he's like a great fighter. He's not going to hold a belt, but I think he is a better fighter than Jake Matthews. I think this fight might be close because Li Jingliang is pretty averse to defense, which kind of makes fights probably closer than they need to be. But I just think his offensive output is more here, and that's going to be enough. Jake Matthews is not a bad counter fighter, but he is going to be forced into that role. Li Jingliang marches forward aggressively, continues to do so, kind of relentless with that pressure. And so, just off the optics, that's going to give the edges to him there. I also think he is a much more active fighter. And so he is just going to pile up points here. Wrestling, I think from both men is close to a wash because neither of them are very good at either end of it. Jake Matthews is a little more offensively wrestling inclined, but I don't know that he's good enough to mix it up. I could see it going to Matthews. I could see him landing enough shots on the counter and scoring a couple of takedowns and just squeaking one out here. But I think more likely than not, and the odds sure seem to indicate that Li Jingliang marches forward, busts him up with a bunch of punches, and just outlands him over the course of 15 minutes. Give me Li Jingliang by unanimous decision. And our boy Wes Riddle sort of agrees he is also taking Jingliang, but he's taking a TKO in the second round. So two of us for Li Jingliang. Is it another hat trick, Nikolai?
It happens to be. This time, we'll say it's in soccer just to mix things up even more. So give me Li Jingliang here by decision. So yet again, Jed, when there's a little diversity, I got to, again, side with you. I don't know why Maybe bad minds think alike. Maybe good minds, although we haven't been doing so well this year in picks wise. So give me Li Jinglong here, and basically this comes down to the fact that this guy is wild. I mean, I know we talked about, or I talked to someone about the fact that the Leech, like his nickname's the Leech because he used to sort of just take guys down, but he's so moved away from that, and which is fantastic. What's that?
He don't do that no more.
No, he really doesn't, and I guess maybe it's time to change that nickname. But I mean, I don't mind it. But the guy just throws down. He hits pretty hard. He's more of a pressure and volume fighter than a one-punch KO fighter, but the guy still has power in both hands. I mean, most fighters do. Almost every fighter does, and so I think he busts Jake Matthews up on the feet here. Matthews does have a very clear path to victory. I don't know what Jingliang, what his wrestling, defensive wrestling is. I mean, it's okay, but it's not, it doesn't stand out among anyone else's really. I remember after getting beat down for 2+ rounds, Keita Nakamura came back and choked him out. I mean, Jake Matthews could do something like that. He could get beat up for 2 rounds and come back and to take him down and submit him. I could see that happening. I won't be shocked. Matthews could wrestle his way to a victory here in his home country. But I'm going to go Li Jinglong here. I like him by decision. Just like you, I like him to outpoint Matthews on the feet en route to yet another victory. The guy has been he's been on quite the winning streak. So Li Jingliang slowly turning into not just an action fighter, but also maybe a top 15 contender at 170 pounds. We move on to the heavyweight division. Tai Tuivasa Bam Bam taking on Cyril Silverback Asker. Interesting fight at heavyweight, only because I think Tuivasa has some potential to go farther than where he's at now. He is a pretty big favorite here against Cyril Asker, about 3-1, a bit more than that, actually. Do you agree with those odds? Are you going with the undefeated Australian, or do you think the Frenchman, Silverback himself, can upset Tuivasa?
I mean, this is a super straightforward affair here. If you believe in Cyril Asker's takedowns, which would not be outlandish, he has sure landed a lot of them. He seems to be fairly good at that. Then you probably are taking Cyril Asker just because Tuivasa is still fairly young in his career. I don't know that he's ever hit the floor. And you just sort of would expect that if Cyril Asker gets takedowns, he's going to win. I don't believe that that's what's going to happen here. Tai Tuivasa is basically Mark Hunt. He looks like him, both in body structure and just the way he fights. He hits very hard. Mark Hunt, training partner, works with the guy, has gone on the record saying he is the hardest puncher he has ever been hit by, which is high fucking praise if you know anything about the myriad of people Mark Hunt has fought. So, yeah, I think this seems straightforward. I'm going to side with Cyril Asker not getting the takedowns on Tai Tuivasa, especially since hometown guy, going to have all this momentum behind him. So, yeah, I think Tuivasa probably gets the early KO over Asker, and Wesley Riddle agrees he has Tuivasa with a first-round KO.
Alrighty, I agree. Give me Tai Tuivasa by first-round knockout as well. Cyril Asker is just not a very good fighter. He needs to get this to the ground if he wants to win. I do not think he will. I think Tuivasa will knock him out before he really gets a chance to. Hometown crowd as well. That can't hurt. So give me Bam Bam to stay undefeated in his second UFC outing by knockout over Cyril Asker in the very first round. And with that, we move on to a training partner of Tai Tuivasa, a popular fighter in the UFC heavyweight division. It is Mark the Super Samoan Hunt taking on rising contender Curtis Razor Blades number 5 versus number 9, perhaps just showing how bad the heavyweight division is, although I don't think Curtis Blades is a guy to look past in general. I'm not saying this fight, but I think the guy does have some potential in the heavyweight division, although still at number 9 this early on. Yeah, it shows some things about the division, but nonetheless, this fight is going down. It's an interesting one. Mark Hunt, Curtis Blades. Who are you picking here?
Dude, I think Curtis Blades is dope. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, His loss is to Francis Ngannou. Like that's it. That's the one loss he's taken. The guy who, just fought for the heavyweight title and lost, but I think most people, you and I certainly expect him to be a heavyweight champion before too terribly long here. And Curtis Blades is not far behind that kind of development level. We're still talking about a dude who started fighting 4 fucking years ago. His first fight was in 2014, so not even 4 years ago, really. Like, and he has steadily improved time in and time out. He is he's a collegiate wrestler, right? I feel like he is. I'm not 100% on that, but I feel like he's a collegiate wrestler. But I mean, more to the point, he is the exact physical dimensions you want as a heavyweight. Big long arms, big hulking dude, not carrying around a ton of fat, like physically in shape dude. He fights at a good pace, like a high pace for the division, especially. He is a good, strong wrestler. Average, works at it a ton. Hasn't given up on his wrestling, but also throws a bunch of strikes too. Like, I think this dude is a top 5 mainstay in the future forever, and I tend to believe that this is a win for him here. The dynamics are the same as the last one. Tuivasa and Hunt both want the same things. They want to keep it up. They want to box. They want to land big, hard punches. Blades here, I think Blades can be more competitive on the feet. I don't think he's winning a striking match with Mark Hunt, but I think that if he's on the feet, like if Cyril Asker's on the feet with Tuivasa, he's fucked. If Blades is on the feet with Mark Hunt, he's not. It's not a desperation takedown game. I think he's got a big long reach. He can work a jab and try and work low kicks and a jab at distance for as long as he can until he pushes forward behind takedowns. And Mark Hunt is a good defensive wrestler. He's not a great defensive wrestler. We saw Brock Lesnar manage to get him down, and take a win off him, juiced or not, whatever. I think the same thing can happen here. I think that fight can be replicated fairly well. Only I think Curtis Blades is actually a pretty durable guy and not going to fold on the first shot that Mark Hunt lands on him. Factor in the fact that Mark Hunt is also friggin' old at this point, like still doing awesome things, good for you, but Mark Hunt's going to lose here, and then he's going to be gone from the UFC, and we can get him in Ryzen or Bellator, in the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix as a substitute. Be awesome. But yeah, give me Curtis Blades with a decision win. I don't think he stops Mark Hunt.
What is West going?
Also has Curtis Blades by decision.
Okay. Again, we're completing the hat trick. And so, Jed, does that mean we're on page up until the main event?
It does.
Wow. So what happens if we are both legitimately picking the same fighter in the main event?
Then there we go. That's just what it is. That's how it's going to be.
So last time we had someone, or it was me and Wes last time, pick all the same fighters, I think. Or did we change?
All of us picked the exact same fighters. All 3 of us did. So I forced us all to pick different fights.
I don't think you did. Did you?
I did.
Really?
Yes, all 3 of us did because I intentionally changed one of my early picks to do something different.
You changed it. That was UFC 217.
Sure. I think that probably is
Wes changed from GSP to Bisbing. That fell out. I had changed to Ayman Bazabi. That fell out. Mm-hmm. And you picked who? I'm trying to remember.
What was the second fight that night? Because I think it was the second fight of the evening.
I think you're right there. Let me see. UFC 217, second fight of the night. Oh, you picked Oleinik over Blades.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of fun.
See, there you go. Was that right? Was that right? Hold on. I need to see what UFC 217 was then.
That's what people call bad radio when you get off track and start Googling things and looking up info that you don't remember. But it ended up being Curtis Blades, and we're talking about him anyway. So
I think I might have done it just for funsies. But yeah, like I did.
You picked Oleinik way early on.
I did because I was like, Curtis Blades is going to win, but let's have fun, and I'll pick Alexei Oleinik because it's.
And then
fun.
You still counted that as your change, though, which I don't know how much I agreed with that, but.
When I said Curtis Blades is going to win, but I'm doing this for fun, I think that means I picked Curtis Blades to win. But the point is, if you and I are together on all of them, we're together because we're keeping score for the whole year, so. I guess we are kind of just committed to maybe having events like this, but it'll be unfortunate. It'd be a smart move on your part because it means I can't take the belt from you then. There's no way I could take the Picks belt from you next week.
Well, you never know. We'll see. We'll see what happens in about 5 minutes' time. So, anyways, in the co-main event, I'm going Curtis Blades. I like him also by decision. So, us 3 are on the same page 100%, not even differing in the method. victory for Curtis Razor Blades. I like him by decision simply because I think he'll get on top of Mark Hunt, bust him up. But I just don't think over 3 rounds he has enough time. I mean, it took Stipe Miocic 5 rounds or just under 5 rounds to stop Mark Hunt. And of course, it should have been stopped earlier. But to my point, Mark Hunt is still tough. I mean, does he have the best wrestling defense? No, he has decent wrestling defense. So Curtis Blades, he needs to show up on Saturday. He needs to be the best wrestler he's ever been, or else it's going to be. I find it interesting. I don't know exactly what Blades' wrestling credentials are, and I know you weren't positive either, but like Stipe was able to take Mark Hunt down. Brock Lesnar was able to take Mark Hunt down, but Stipe's even still at the time was and is still even then was one of the best heavyweights on the planet, and clearly that came true shortly thereafter.
Blades
and
is a
Brock
JUCO
Lesnar,
national champion. I thought that was right, but I didn't want to say it because I was afraid I was wrong. But yeah, he was a JUCO national champion. So
and Brock Lesnar is just Brock Lesnar. He's a physical specimen and he's a good fighter.
Brock Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar
was an NCAA national champion wrestler.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see, does Curtis Blades have the same success on top or just getting the fight to the ground? Because he kind of failed to do so in his second last fight, the one before Oleinik, when he fought just another, general heavyweight, that Daniel Omielanchuk. And I mean, maybe Daniel's better than we all give him credit for, but that I don't know if that was a good showing for Curtis. And so I'm not as high on Blades as some people. I think he can be a contender, but we still need to take it slowly. I think Mark Hunt's a good fight for him just because Hunt is old. He's 40 years old or right around there, maybe even 41. And so I think this is going to be the coming out party for Curtis Blades. I think he'll struggle on the feet a little bit, but Hunt is slow enough and not active enough on the feet where he's not going to get just like, it's not like he's going to be a fish out of water on the feet, but Hunt on the ground could be. And so I think Blades has a bigger advantage on the ground than Hunt does on the feet. So I am going Curtis Blades by unanimous decision, and that's my pick. If it was a 5-rounder, I would consider a late championship round TKO stoppage on the ground for Curtis Blades.
For the main event, Wet or Nick?
I don't know if we can go there quite yet. I'm not sure if I've mentally prepared myself to.
Wes Riddle is taking Luke Rockhold by TKO in the 4th round. I would like your pick first.
I'm pretty sure
I already have mine written down.
Well, I'm going to write mine down too. So I think you should go first.
No, I think you should just say yours right now.
Typically, usually on before the battle, you go before I do.
Yeah, I've led
stakes are high.
Picks. I do first the production every time, as you said, and then I've picked first every time, and then you've just copied my picks. So I need you to pick first this one time to make sure that you can't copy my pick.
I'm not copying your pick because I have it written down. It is on this phone that is advertising the Winnipeg Jets.
You could change that right now.
No, talking. Here is my phone. Show the
people the pick. Just show the people.
I don't know if I can do that.
Just show the people the pick.
All right. I know we're gonna differ on this. But
okay. I'll even close my eyes so that you show the people the pick. Okay.
All right. But can you read that? They got it anyway. Yes.
All right. Let's see, because I'm going to take Luke Rockhold. I don't feel good about it, but I'm taking Luke Rockhold. You're smiling? I can't tell if that's a smile that you... Anyway, all right. I'm just going to get to my breakdown so we can wrap this up because we're closing in here.
That was a very silly back and forth.
But it was, but whatever. Who cares? I will not be at all surprised if Romero wins this fight. I think the ways he wins this fight are extremely obvious. He punches Luke Rockhold in his very pretty face, and Luke Rockhold falls down because it seems like Luke Rockhold might not take a punch all that well. David Branch in their last outing had him real hurt. Michael Bisping, notorious knockout artist Michael Bisping, dropped him and killed him. It seems like maybe he just doesn't take a punch all that well, and he seems to be taking punches a lot more frequently. I have a theory on why this is, and I think that it's because he's bad at striking. He's not bad at striking, but he's a very bad boxer, and he's not defensively responsible, and he doesn't create enough variety in what he does on the feet to make people think about things. So once they kind of figure out what he's doing, like his timing, they just say, all right, I'm just going to punch him really hard in the face. And then they do that, and then it kills him. And Yoel Romero hits extremely hard. If Yoel Romero does punch him very square in the face, I think that he gets the stoppage. My belief here is that Yoel Romero is not going to do that in this particular instance, and I'm basically playing the averages here because every fight that Yoel Romero doesn't land a knockout, I think Luke Rockhold just wins either on points or by virtue of having a better gas tank over the course of 5 rounds. I think this is a super interesting fight. There are tactics here that I'm questioning. If Yoel Romero tries to take Luke Rockhold down, he is fucked. Like, legitimately, for my money, Luke Rockhold is the most terrifying grappler in MMA. You don't want to spend a single fucking second on the floor with this man because he will murder your entire existence. Dave Branch went to the floor for about 10 seconds and then the fight was over. Like, just suddenly the fight was over. The moment Chris Weidman engaged in a fucking scramble with Luke Rockhold, he died. He was probably winning that fight. And then Luke Rockhold, he threw that stupid kick. Luke Rockhold got his back and suddenly the fight was over because he is predatory on the fucking floor in a way we just don't see. Like, Khabib Nurmagomedov is the only other guy who is that kind of violent on the floor. And Khabib works takedowns. Luke Rockhold is a counter wrestler. His style seems to be developed out of training with Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez and having these guys push him in just a reactive way to fighting like that. If Romero comes out and tries to use that Olympic silver medal to take Luke Rockhold down, he is going to lose in brutal, violent fashion. If he doesn't, then he has a much better chance of winning, but he still has to punch him in the face. That's it. Anything else is probably not going to get the job done, and I think that most of this fight is going to be contested on the feet at range with Rockhold just kicking him. He's just going to kick him a bunch, and that's been a very effective weapon for Luke Rockhold. I think it still can be. Basically, I'm banking on Luke Rockhold not getting punched in the face. And I actually think Rockhold's move away from AKA is a good one. I think training with Henry Hooft at Combat Club can do a lot of good things for his career. I think Hooft can kind of fix his striking game, and I'm hoping that the Branch kind of looking bad was part of Hooft breaking down the bad habits Rockhold has in the striking, particularly the boxing department, as he tries to build up a new, different kind of striking acumen in the guy. We'll see how that plays out in the long run, but I think I'd pick Robert Whitaker to beat Luke Rockhold because of the boxing. I don't think Yoel Romero can do it. I will also be interested to see if Luke Rockhold finally starts taking people down because he should just do that. He's so good on top and on the floor that he should basically just be wrestling people because the fight's over as soon as he scores a takedown. But we'll see if any of this happens. I'm taking the averages. I think more likely than not, Rockhold either able to score enough points over the course of 15 minutes or at some point winds up on top, and then that's just the end of the ball game. It's over. We're done here. And Romero's old, and I know he's like actually, I genuinely believe the best athlete who has ever competed in mixed martial arts. But at some point, age really has to catch up to you. I think he'll be a little slower, and Rockhold's just going to beat him up. Probably, I'm going to say a 5th round stoppage. I'm going to say in the last round, Rockhold finally gets on top and then just murks him. So give me Luke Rockhold to win the UFC interim middleweight title.
Well, do we differ ever on this episode of Before the Battle? Do we, or should I say, do I give you a chance to reclaim your picks title, or do I play it safe and take home a draw? Well, you don't give me enough credit for taking risks on the show. I typically go with favorites. I have all of tonight, but give me the Soldier of God.
You took Ben Nguyen, who's a very slight underdog.
That's right. Give me the Soldier of God. Yes. Give me Yoel Romero. You have a chance, Jed. You're welcome. And here we go. So, Yoel Romero fights are so tough to predict. And so you're not confident in Rockhold. I'm not confident in Yoel. No one should be confident in this fight. Absolutely nobody. Not even Rockhold's parents. Not even Romero's, kids or wife or anyone, his family. Nobody should be. This is a very close fight. The odds indicate that. And it comes down to a lot of things. I mean, Rockhold, it's going to be interesting to see how the move with Henry Hooft in Florida affects him, particularly affects his striking game, and even more specifically, his boxing game. Because let's be honest, Luke Rockhold managed to capture the UFC middleweight title in December of 2015 despite not having great boxing. Like, despite having not great boxing at all. And so that's kind of interesting. So he's made it work, but Michael Bisping. I can't say Michael Bisping beat Luke Rockhold because he's a better striker more than Rockhold just thought he would destroy Bisping, as he kind of had the right to think that.
I mean, he had just done it 18 months before. He literally knocked him out and submitted him.
I know. And so, again, I mean, Rockhold had no – I mean, let's be honest. We can't blame Rockhold for thinking he would destroy Bisping, but you can't overlook your opponents, and it seems like he did that. And so he learned his lesson, and he came back better against David Branch, got the win. I just can't pick against Yoel Romero. I've been high on the guy ever since I've watched him fight, and that was about 4 years ago now. And, yeah, I'm a new fan, but, you know, take that for what it's worth. The guy just – like the reason this is interesting is because Yoel Romero is getting old. And so I thought Jacare was going to get knocked out by Derek Brunson, as did Wes, because Jacare is old and because he's coming off a loss to Robert Whittaker. Now, granted, Romero's loss to Whittaker in July of last year wasn't nearly as brutal as Jacare's. It was a close decision win for Whittaker. But Romero is 40 years old. He has to decline eventually. He looks like a superhero, but he can't just look like a superhero forever. You can't just do that. And so he has to go down eventually. Does that start now? Did that start in July when he lost to Whittaker? That remains to be seen until Saturday. I'm going to hope not. Fingers are crossed Yoel Romero decline does not start. It will start eventually, pretty soon, but I don't think that'll be the deciding factor here. I just think he's like, it's so weird. Like, Rockhold could light Romero up with kicks. He's certainly the better grappler, even though Romero's a fantastic wrestler himself. If Romero's going to win, he needs to keep this on the feet, as you said. And he needs to get inside Rockhold's reach, because Rockhold does have the physical advantage. He's quite a bit taller, quite a bit longer in reach. And so he needs to get inside. He needs to bust Rockhold up, and ultimately he needs to get a knockout. I think Yoel Romero needs to knock out Luke Rockhold to get this win, to get the intermiddleweight championship. I think he needs to stop Luke Rockhold if he wants to win this fight. Otherwise, Rockhold will win a decision, just outpointing him on the feet. But Romero does crazy things. He does so much weird stuff. And that's honestly another concern. Like, it gives me less reason to doubt Romero, because he can win, coming from behind at any given moment. Like, Chris Weidman might have been beating him 2018. I think that's a very possible scorecard, and Romero just need him from hell. And so that could happen again. It really could, or anything. I mean, Romero, let's be honest, Romero does some controversial things in there. I remember the Tim Kennedy fight stands out among the rest, staying on the stool longer, then may arguably grabbing his glove, pounding him in the face. I mean, Yoel Romero does weird stuff and maybe illegal stuff in the cage, and so just another reason.
You ain't trying.
What's that?
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Honestly, we always kind of joke about that, but it's true. It is
always cheating.
No, it's 100% true. Yeah. And so that's good on Romero. Here, I think Romero, like, it's a weird matchup because Rockhold, his knockout loss to Michael Bisping was just a straightforward punch. Romero doesn't really do that. Like, he doesn't go in there, knock a guy out in the first round with punches. That's just not Romero's game. He himself isn't the best boxer. But I think he's able to outpoint Rockhold in more round. I mean, even still, like, Rockhold could be winning, and then Romero just does something weird. And it's so tough to call. Ultimately, I think Romero will get the job done. Rockhold has more ways to win. He could outpoint him on the feet. He certainly could outpoint him or submit him or ground and pound TKO him on the ground. But Romero is just so deadly, and he does weird stuff. And I like weird stuff. So Yoel Romero will finally get the well-deserved UFC gold, even though it's the interim title around his waist, setting up a not-so-interesting rematch with Robert Whittaker. If I'm going to be honest, like, I don't see that going any other way than it did last summer.
That fight was awesome and close. Like, Whittaker won. Arguably, Whittaker won because Romero made a mistake in the 5th round. Like, it was a super close fight. I would watch the shit out of it again. I agree. I'll take Whittaker to win again, but it was super fun fight.
Fair enough. So Romero, I'm going to pick him because he has more third-round stoppages than any other round or decision. So give me Yoel Romero by knockout in round number 3. I don't know. I mean, I do know. I think he needs to stop him within 3 rounds too. He needs to stop Rockhold and needs to be within 15 minutes, or else Rockhold is going to start tearing him up in the 4th and 5th when Romero starts to tire. So we saw that against Whitaker. Romero, I believe, won the first 2 rounds. Whitaker stole the show in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And so I think it could, look similar as far as the rounds go, but I think Romero does get it done in round number 3 by knockout, and that is my pick. Real quick before we move on to DraftKings and all that good stuff, someone in the chat, Kyle Stevens, and it's funny that you mentioned Henry Hooft. He has a comment and wants us to briefly discuss Rockhold's move to Florida and training with Hooft. Kyle says, guys, I have to go to work, but I just want to leave my prediction here. Yoel by KO. I don't know when. Please, when you get to this fight, mention how awful of a coach Hooft is. His fighters mentally fade, or he says actually mentally break, he means, and if not mentally, physically. He is the next Tarverdian, I tell you. Well, I don't believe that, or I don't
that guy's
agree
insane.
with that whatsoever. But he says mentally break. I mean, if they think it's not going their way from the get-go, then they'll mentally break. So that's what Kyle is saying. I disagree. I think the move is good. It's changing things up. Nothing wrong with AKA. I think he's perfectly fine training with Kane and Cormier. But if he feels it's working for him, and let's be honest, what area does Rockhold need the most work in? It is his boxing and his striking, and Henry Hooft's gonna or should do wonders there. So.
I think that there is a kernel of truth there, but the reality is not that Henry Hooft makes fighters that mentally break. I think Henry Hooft is a very linear kind of teacher. He can approach things only in the way that works for him, which means he is a bit of an authoritarian coach. So, I mean, his most famous student is Anthony Johnson, and Anthony Johnson is known for crumbling when the pressure gets on him. And so I think that there is a kernel of truth to that. But the reality is, that is an inherent thing in Anthony Johnson. It is not. Henry Hooft did not instill the quit in him. And I feel bad calling Anthony Johnson a quitter because he's one of the best light heavyweights on the planet if he chose to fight. Or if you saw the most recent picture of him, he's the best heavyweight on the planet at this point. But anyway, that's not Henry. Henry Hooft is not good at coaching that out of somebody. But I don't believe that he makes his fighters quit. I think that, if you watched Anthony Johnson fold to Daniel Cormier twice, Henry Hooft isn't out there saying, well, just give up, go fuck yourself, you're done. He's telling him, please don't quit, you have to try harder, do this. I don't think he is not a motivational speaker. That's not who he is. He is not Greg fucking Jackson. But what he is a very smart striking mind who understands the tactics, the strategies, and that the various aspects of the striking game exceptionally well. And I think in a way with a style that will complement what Luke Rockhold's physical attributes are. So I don't particularly think of Luke Rockhold as a quitter. We haven't really seen him ever be a quitter. So I don't think that Henry Hooft is needed to instill confidence or build his psyche like that. So I think it's a great pairing for him. And to call him next to Verdian is frankly disrespectful and insane if you know anything about Henry Hooft's accomplishments and legacy in these fighting world. So but I do think he has a bit of a kernel of truth there, but no, the rest of that's nonsense. I personally think this is a great move for Rockhold.
All right, let's move on to our post-fight bonus predictions. Jed, I'll let you go first, and I believe we have Wes as well, so get to those as well.
We do. My prediction for fight of the night, I debated on going the main event, but I sort of think that maybe Rockhold just beats up Romero for the most part. So I'm siding with the Kim Brown fight. I think mostly that's going to be a striking matchup and kind of a back and forth brawl for a lot of it. So I think there are actually several good choices on this card, though, but that's going to be the one I pick. My performance bonuses, Tai Tuivasa, we're all picking him to get an early KO. None of us think much of Cyril Asker, and Tuivasa hits hard. Give me Tuivasa, and I'm also taking Adesanya to get an early KO of Rob Wilkinson. So he's also going to be a bonus winner for me. My underdog pick, I picked one underdog on this card. Usually I have a few more, but I only picked one very slight underdog, Ben Wynn. So give me Ben Wynn as my underdog pick. Wes Riddle ended up taking 3 underdogs on the card, Jumo Hirota and Damian Brown. So good for you, Wes. He is going with Hirota as his underdog pick. So there you go. His fight of the night going to be Rockhold Romero. He's taking the main event. And then his performances, Tai Tuivasa and Li Jiangling. So that leaves you, Nikolai.
I was looking at this card, and before you said your bonuses, I was thinking of the exact same ones you said.
No, that's fair. I mean, I went with pretty standard stuff, really.
The only I'm
Your
sold.
underdog pick is Romero.
Yeah, my underdog pick is Romero. So I mean, it could be Ben Wen, but I'll go Romero just because it's the main event and means a bit more. But confidence levels, just for what it's worth, pretty equal as far as Romero and Wen go. As far as fight night, like I'm sold on Tuivasa and Adesanya as my performances. So write that down. Okay. I'm just debating between Brown Kim and Formiga Wen. I mean, Formiga Wen is one of the best fights on the card, but it's like so technical where it might not be like it'll be a good fight, but it might not be fight of the night, if that makes sense. And I think Brown Kim has the potential to be a brawl. So I'll keep it boring just because that's the trend of the show. And I'll go with Brown Kim as well. But at least we do differ on our underdog pick of the week. And with that, let us move on to our DraftKings teams. I'll let you and kind of Wes go first. What do you got for DraftKings?
All right, so Wes gave us a team. I suspect he might make some changes over the next day or two about this because he doesn't have either of the main eventers in here, which is not a strong strategy for DraftKings usually. But his team right now, as it sits, is Volkanovski, Brown, Hirota, Jingliangling, Tuivasa, and Ishihara. So taking I mean, it makes sense here. He's picking a couple of underdogs to win, so he's put them on his squad.
Hold on, so he has Hirota and Teruto?
What? He does. That seems odd. Wait, no. I mean, Hirota's fighting Pearson. Ishihara's fighting
Canales. Oh, I was because they did fight before. Yeah,
they did. They fought. They went to a split draw, maybe.
Yeah, for the tough Japan final.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I suspect we might see some differences there, but not terrible. My team is almost done. I have one slot open and I can't decide, but I'll tell you right now, my team is Daichi Abe. He 8,200, basically middle of the road, and I think he's going to beat Jumo convincingly. Luke Rockhold, always take your main event pick, should always be on your DraftKings team. Curtis Blades, I think he's going to land a bunch of takedowns against Mark Hunt, and so get a bunch of points. Ben Wen, $8,100. He and Formiga are literally dead even picks. Both of them cost $8,100. So I'm taking Ben Wen because I'm picking him. And when he wins, he puts up a lot of points. Like he has triple-digit points every one of his wins. So I think that it's likely he can do that again here. And then Tai Tuivasa, we're all putting him on our teams. He is on all three of our performance bonuses. So I think you definitely put him on your team if you can, which then leaves me $7,700 to play with. And so basically I'm choosing between Hirota or Damian Brown or maybe even JBC Kennedy, as an underdog pick, or I guess even Jake Matthews. Like any of those guys I think have a good chance to win, but whether they do or not, I'm not picking any of them to win. So it's tough for me to call. At the moment, I will say I am going to put who's more likely to win here, Nikolai? I can't decide.
Well, I think considering you're picking Brown as your fight of the night loser, he might pick up more points in a fun loss.
I think that might be. I'm gonna crunch some numbers, but he also exactly fits how much money I have left. So for the moment, I'm gonna put Brown as the last guy on my team. I might crunch some numbers and mix things up later, but for the moment, I'll round out my squad with Brown, which just leaves you.
So I actually don't have Tai Tuivasa, so it's funny how you mentioned that we all would, but no, I do not. So I kick things off with Daichi Abe.
Okay.
And then we go with Israel Adesanya. And then we go Li Jingliang. And then that leaves me with three. Well, Ben Wen is basically middle of the road. He's an underdog betting-wise, but on DraftKings, he and Formiga are dead even. So Ben Wen, and then two underdogs, Damian Brown and Yoel Romero. The only one I was thinking about switching, it was either Adesanya or Tuivasa, both fit in that spot. I just came to the conclusion that I think Adesanya, I mean, it's really just a coin toss, but there's a chance Adesanya, with the striking and his funkiness, might pick up like a few more points than Tuivasa, who might just be a more straightforward KO. And so I put Adesanya in that spot instead of Tuivasa.
That,
Having both on your team, if you can fit, is fantastic. I think they're sort of the biggest locks of the night, maybe, and we'll get both. We'll both get a lot of points, but I chose to. I couldn't fit him, so.
well, that means all three of us have Brown. Damian Brown is somehow the unifying fighter amongst all three of us at the moment. You and I, Nick, are sharing three. We're both sharing Abe, Nguyen, and Brown. So it's your Adesanya, Jingliang, and Romero versus my Rockhold, Tuivasa, and Curtis Blades. So we'll see how it goes. And again, up for change, possibly changes, but I think that puts a bow on it, son.
It does. I'm going to be honest. If Rockhold wins, I mean, with you having Curtis Blades on there as well, I think you might have a better team. But we will see how that all plays out. And thank you all for watching episode 99, UFC Perth edition of Before the Battle. Thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. If you enjoy this program, go give us a thumbs down there.
A thumbs
up down there. A thumbs up down there. Don't give us a thumbs down. We would thank you very much. If you have any feedback, anything you'd like to say, any comments, suggestions, anything at all, drop a note in the comment section down below. Go subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I would really, really appreciate that as well. Jed, remind everybody where they can find you on social media and anything you want to plug with your MMA coverage. Now's your time.
You can follow me on social media on Twitter. Give me a follow at Jed Meshew. Everything I do links off there. As far as my writing, every day at MMAfighting.com, you can find my words, usually in the morning report at 8 a.m. every weekday. Also, several different columns, features I run now. And on this weekend, either tomorrow or Saturday, unclear which, maybe I guess even Sunday, a special treat for you MMA fans going to be thrown out there. Can't give you any more information on that because it's not out yet, but check back for then another collaboration between me and Alexander Lee, who collaborate every Monday for an article called Missed Fist, recapping the best non-major MMA fights of the weekend, so you don't have to watch all the shitty regional MMA that is an option for you to watch. We'll do all the hard work for you and just highlight the stuff you would like to catch up on. So check out all that stuff. Follow me on Twitter. And I have another podcast. It's called The MMA Circus. I do it frequently with Nicholas Baldwin.
So but you didn't do this week.
I didn't, but you should check it out. It's a pretty good one. And after the fights on Saturday, Nick, you'll tell the people that, but he and I are doing a new thing then. So it's been fun, boy.
It has. You guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. Find all of my MMA writing and interviews and coverage and all of that stuff over at bloodyelbow.com. Go check it out, and I'd certainly appreciate that. And everybody over at BE would appreciate if you headed over there as well. That's pretty much it as far as my interviews. I did quite a few in the past week and a half or so. They're all on this YouTube channel. Some will find their way on Bloody Elbow sooner than later, others will not. But I recently have talked to, just going back about a week, I talked to Louis Smolka and Russell Doan in a joint interview. They were in the car together, heading home from, I believe, Team Oyama. And Smolka is no longer a UFC fighter. He fought out his contract in his last loss, and he's headed back to the regional circuit, although it seems like if he gets a couple wins, he'll be right back in the octagon. Russell Doan, of course, fighting Hanayaya, both recently moved to California within the past month to train at Oyama's gym. I talked to Andre Fili after his win over Dennis Bermudez. I talked to former NFL player Greg Hardy, the controversial Greg Hardy himself. He's 2-0 in amateur MMA. He's a heavyweight, and he has his third fight coming up at LFA 33 next week. And I talked to Ben Wen, who, of course, we talked about here tonight. I talked to Cajun Johnson, all things EA UFC Sports 3. He does not like the game because he did not get paid for the game. No fighters did, and he has a lot to say about that. Talked to Elias Theodoro. He was a ring card boy this past weekend, believe it or not. Talked to UFC bandweight Rob Font about his win over Thomas Almeida last month. Talked to Greg Ribello, who won the CES MMA heavyweight title this past weekend. And finally, I talked to the Pancrase play-by-play man, Stuart Fulton, about the crazy fight this past weekend that you guys featured on Missed Fists. And if anyone hasn't watched it, it is the main event of Pancrase 293 on Fight Pass. What a fight. Super fun one. Go check that out. And also talk to Fulton about living in Japan, how he got with Pancrase and all of that. Beyond Combat was live yesterday. Talked to Jason House of Iridium Sports Agency about also managing football players, the MMA circus. Andrew Lawrence was back. We talked this card, last card, TJ Dillashaw, Garbrandt, and all that. Taking up a lot of your time, as I usually do. Thank you for not closing this page throughout that spiel. Thank you for listening. And for Jed Meshew, my name is Nick Baldwin. Enjoyed the fights on Saturday.